Where is the dog, Luthor? Where's the dog?
What dog?
I ate the dog.
Hey everyone, I'm the Canadian lad, and I just got back from watching Superman, and wow, what a ride that was. This movie takes you through a full-on emotional loop. It stumbles here and there, sure, but for the most part, it lands where it needs to. The entire weight of the new DC universe is resting on this movie's shoulders. If this movie flops at the box office, the reboot might crash and burn before it even takes off. So yeah, the pressure is massive, and you know what? I think it pulled through. Yes, the movie is flawed at times, quite silly at times, but then it hits you with action that slaps, and character moments that really put Superman's values to the test. I genuinely had a great time with it. But just because I liked it doesn't mean I'm gonna ignore the flaws. There's a lot that worked and some things that really didn't. So I'm gonna break it all down, and a quick heads up, this video will be full of spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, hit pause, go watch it, and come back when you're ready. Now here's how I'm gonna do this. I'll go back and forth. One thing I really liked from the movie, followed by one thing that didn't work for me. That way, by the end, you can decide whether this movie lived up to the hype or fell short. And that's the purpose of this short video essay. So without any further ado, let's begin. A truly formidable villain. I don't think I've ever seen a better portrayal of the Superman vs. Lex Luthor rivalry than what we get in this film. This Luthor is ruthless. His hatred for metahumans runs so deep, he has basically forgiven himself in advance for every future crime. Because in his mind, it's all part of the plan. One thing this movie has done exceptionally well is how James Gunn wrote Lex Luthor fighting Superman through the evil clone. Lex isn't just watching from the sidelines, he's calling the shots, literally. He knows every move, every counter, every scenario. 2,500 combat moves all committed to memory. Without him yelling out the commands, Ultraman basically can do nothing. When he kept shouting, 1A, 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 you could actually feel it. It was like Lex himself was landing those blows, and that's what made this version so powerful. He's just a human going up against an alien god, and yet it feels like an even match. Because it's not about strength, it's about control, strategy, and precision. If the clone had its own mind, Lex would have been just another guy behind the scenes. But here, he's the brain and the brawn, just operating remotely. Lex's weird soft spot for Eve Taskmaster. This is something that really didn't work for me. Lex's whole relationship with Eve. This movie paints Lex as a super genius mastermind who's always one step ahead. But somehow the same guy lets his girlfriend take selfies with classified blueprints and sensitive files? For a man who swaps girlfriends like suits, you'd think he'd at least be cautious enough to keep them far away from anything remotely sensitive. It just doesn't track. This whole plotline could have been much stronger if they had gone a different route. What if Lex was actually in a serious relationship with Eve, but over time she starts to fear what he's capable of? She realizes he's so much consumed by vengeance that he wouldn't hesitate to destroy the city of Metropolis. And that's when she chooses to betray him. Not out of recklessness, but out of principle. That would have been powerful. That betrayal would have meant something. Instead, what we got feels way too convenient. Anytime Lois or Jimmy hits a wall, Eve just pops up with the exact info they need, like a walking cheat code. There's no struggle, no real detective work. Everything just lands in their laps because Eve keeps showing up with the golden ticket. And for me, this looks like lazy writing. Not a Superman origin, but a DC one. Now here's what I loved. This movie isn't really about Superman's origin, it's about the origin of the new DCU. And honestly, it does a pretty great job. I've seen people say that they were initially not happy with the bold cut Guy Gardner, but by the time the movie reached its climax, they were cheering for him. And Mr. Terrific has completely stolen the show. Even folks who didn't love the movie are still praising him. That says a lot. So yeah, the movie had a huge task. It wasn't just about solidifying David Corenswet as the new Superman, but it also had to introduce an entire lineup of new heroes that most casual viewers have never even heard of. And for the most part, it worked. But that brings us to the pacing problem. And here's where things started to crack a little. Because the film had to juggle Superman's arc and introduce all these other DC characters, it sometimes felt cramped, like it was moving way too fast for its own good. Now on paper, the runtime looks solid. 2 hours and 9 minutes sounds perfect. But when you cram in that many subplots and side characters, the movie starts bouncing around like crazy. Just when you're settling into a moment in Metropolis, it cuts to a completely different location. The flow gets choppy, and at times it pulls you out of the story instead of pulling you in deeper. You probably noticed the movie fades to black several times, right? That's actually because in the earlier cuts, the story was broken up like an episodic structure, day 1, day 2, and so on. But in the final version, they ditched those title cards and stitched everything into one continuous timeline. The structure itself didn't change, same scenes, same order. But without the days of the week markers, those cut to black transitions transitions now just feel awkward. If they had kept the Days of the Week title cards, it would have helped us track the momentum. We'd know when things were ramping up, when the climax was near. It would have given the pacing more clarity and the story more shape. Instead, those abrupt transitions kinda yank you out of the rhythm. This Superman has emotions. I'm not saying the other iterations or Henry Cavill's Superman didn't have any emotions. They did, but David Cornsweat's Superman is vulnerable at times and acknowledges it. And that makes a huge difference. This is hands down the most human Superman we've seen so far. And that might make him the most relatable one too. Superman is the most powerful being on planet Earth, but he's also supposed to represent hope. And that's a really contradictory trait to have. Because on one hand, you're the ultimate force of nature. And on the other, you're meant to inspire people, not scare them. And David portrays that perfectly. This Superman doesn't hold back on emotion. He makes pancakes for Lois. He argues with her and he confesses his love. He wrestles with the truth about his biological parents, stands up for humanity, loses it when Lex takes the dog, and when Lois asks, why would you surrender yourself just for a dog? Soup says, yeah, and he's not a very good dog either. But he's out there alone and he's probably scared. The way David delivered this line with so much sincerity, it honestly made me choke up a bit. And then he acknowledges out loud that his greatest strength isn't his power, it's humanity. And he even tells Lex that should be your strength too. And that's my Superman. I love seeing that side of him. But the comic relief keeps cutting the emotion short. And this brings me to my third issue with the film, the tone. Specifically, the way some jokes keep undercutting the emotional moments. One major example is the final conversation between Superman and Lex. It's supposed to be huge. Two titans laying everything out. Superman says he's just as human as anyone else in this room. He admits he gets scared, that he wakes up not knowing what to do, but still he gets up and tries to do the right thing. He screws up, he questions himself, but he keeps trying, and that's what makes him human. Then Lex starts to open up, and you can tell he's about to say something real. He's consumed by hatred, and we're finally about to see the root of it. But just as it gets intense, Crypto jumps in and ragdolls Lex across the room. Now look, comedy is subjective. If you found that funny, great, you're gonna have a blast. But for someone like me, who wants deeper character moments, this scene was completely hijacked by the Crypto joke. David actually said in an interview that James Gunn himself cried directing this monologue.
What was your reactions when you watched that back about being human?
It was cool because the moment where James and I had a big disagreement about how the scene should be played and how I should do it. So in addition to being a key moment in the film with Lex, it was kind of a key moment for me and James as director and actor. And James came out and he was crying, and he said that was really special. And at the end of the day, he said, this may be one of my favorite days directing. And so that meant quite a lot to me.
So my question is, if James Gunn himself cried watching that scene, why not give the audience the same opportunity to feel the gravity of the scene? Why cut it short with a joke? The only emotional scene that got enough room to breathe was the conversation between Pa Kent and Clark. This scene was allowed to sit, and because of that, it landed with the audience, it resonated. I just wish the whole movie had moments like that. A story that lets his characters speak and feel without being cut off by a joke. And that's pretty much my full take on Superman. I'm giving it a solid 9 out of 10, mainly because of the phenomenal performances from David Cornsweat, Nicholas Hoult, and Rachel Brosnahan, and the weight this movie was carrying right from the beginning. Otherwise, honestly speaking, it's more of a 7.5 out of 10. Also, I'll admit I had zero expectations for the Justice Gang, but they completely won me over. I'm actually rooting for them now, which I did not see coming. This movie delivered some truly great moments. I just wish they were allowed to breathe a little more instead of getting cut short by jokes or fast transitions. But that's my side of the story. I want to hear yours. What did you think of James Gunn's Superman? Drop your thoughts in the comments. As you know, I read every single one of them. I've watched the movie only twice now, and I plan on watching 2 more times. As you know, I take notes of the hidden details and Easter eggs I catch, so a full Easter eggs and hidden details breakdown is coming up shortly. So I'll see you lads in the next one. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, then please give me a thumbs up, grab the subscribe button if you haven't already, and turn notifications on.